My marriage has turned into a dead bedroom, and I don't know what to do. It's 2 a.m., and I'm sitting here in the dark, illuminated by the glow of my laptop screen. Julia, my wife, is asleep in the next room. She's curled up under our big, heavy blanket, her back to the empty side of the bed. I know this because that's how she's been sleeping for the last year, always with her back to me, as if she's already distanced herself. I don't remember the last time we touched, kissed, or even hugged in bed. We've been married for 7 years, and the first few years were what I always imagined marriage should be like. We were both in love, passionate, and couldn't keep our hands off each other. I remember when she'd look at me with that spark in her eyes, her deep green eyes that always made me feel like the luckiest man in the world. But now that spark is gone, and I don't know how to bring it back. Started slowly, so slowly that I didn't notice it at first. After work, Julia would be too tired for intimacy. Then it was the weekends, too. She'd say, "Maybe tomorrow, I'm just exhausted tonight." I understood at first. Work was demanding for both of us. She's a nurse, and I know her job can be draining. But the maybe tomorrow became not tonight. And then, I'm not in the mood. And eventually, nothing at all. The first time I brought it up, I tried to be careful. I didn't want to make her feel like I was pressuring her. "Hey, babe," I said one night while we were watching TV on the couch. "I've been thinking, we haven't really been intimate lately. Is everything okay? Are you stressed out about something?" She didn't look away from the TV. Her eyes were fixed on the screen as she responded, almost absent-mindedly. "Yeah, I've just been really tired from work. It's not you, I don't know. I'm not feeling it these days." I nodded, trying to play it cool. "I get that, but is there anything I can do to help? Maybe I can take on more around the house? Or maybe we could plan a weekend away to relax." She finally turned to me then, offering a small smile, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Thanks, but I don't think a weekend away would fix this. I'm just tired. I don't want you to feel bad. It's really not you." I dropped it that night, thinking it was just a phase. Maybe she was burnt out from work. Maybe she was dealing with things she wasn't ready to talk about. But weeks turned into months, and the distance between us kept growing. By the time we hit the 1-year mark of almost no intimacy, I couldn't pretend everything was okay anymore. I felt more like a roommate than a husband. We still functioned well together, handled bills, talked about our day, did house chores, and occasionally went out for dinner, but it all felt so surface level. The spark, the passion, the connection we once had was gone. One evening, after another quiet dinner at home, I couldn't hold it in anymore. As we were clearing the dishes, I turned to her, trying to keep my voice calm. "Julia, we need to talk," I said, my heart pounding in my chest. "I feel like we're avoiding something." She froze for a second before putting down the dish she was holding. She didn't look at me as she leaned against the counter, crossing her arms. "What is it? I don't know how else to say this, but it feels like we're drifting apart," I started. "We haven't been intimate in over a year, and it's not just about the sex, but the closeness, you know? I miss you. I miss us." She sighed, a long, exhausted sound. "I knew this was coming." "What do you mean?" I mean, I knew you'd bring this up eventually," she said, her tone defensive. "Look, I'm sorry, but I don't feel the way I used to. I can't force it." Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. "You don't feel the way you used to? What does that mean? Are you saying you don't love me anymore?" She shook her head quickly. No, that's not it. I still love you. I do. But I don't know. I don't feel that physical attraction like I did before. Maybe it's me. Maybe I've changed, or maybe we both have." I didn't know how to respond. I just stood there, staring at her, feeling a mixture of sadness, frustration, and fear. "So what do we do about this? Just live like this? Without any intimacy? Without trying to fix it?" She shrugged, her voice sounding tired. "I don't know what to say. I've thought about it, but I don't know how to fix something I don't fully understand." That was the end of the conversation that night. We didn't fight, but we didn't come to any resolution either. We just went to bed in our usual positions, her back turned to me and me lying there, staring at the ceiling, feeling like I'd lost something I couldn't get back. I started trying everything I could think of to reignite the flame. I planned a surprise weekend away at a cozy cabin in the mountains, just the two of us, hoping that being away from the stresses of everyday life might help. I thought maybe, just maybe, if we spent time together away from work and responsibilities, we could reconnect. The weekend was nice on the surface. We went hiking, cooked together, and laughed about old memories, but there was still this wall between us. At night, I tried to initiate something more, but Julia gently pushed me away. "Not tonight, okay?" she whispered, her eyes avoiding mine. I nodded, but inside I was breaking. We were in this beautiful cabin, just the two of us, and it still wasn't enough. It's been almost 2 years now, and nothing has changed. I've thought about suggesting therapy, but I'm afraid of what might come out of it. What if she says she really doesn't feel attracted to me anymore? What if there's no way to fix this? I don't want to pressure her or make her feel like she's failing, but at the same time, I feel like I'm losing a part of myself. I've even started wondering if I'm the problem. Maybe I'm not desirable anymore. Maybe she's just fallen out of love with me, even if she can't say it out loud. I love her so much. She's still my best friend, my partner in every sense of the word except this one crucial part. And it's that missing part that's slowly eating away at me. I feel lonely, and it's a strange kind of loneliness, being next to someone every day but feeling like you're a million miles apart. I can't help but resent her sometimes. It's not fair, I know, but when I see other couples, friends of ours who are still affectionate, still seem to have that spark, it hurts. I feel like I'm missing out on something that was supposed to be a fundamental part of our marriage. Last week, I tried talking to her again. I was more direct this time, sitting down with her after dinner. "Julia, I can't keep pretending that this is okay," I said, my voice shaking with emotion. "I need to know if you want to work on this. I can't go on feeling like we're just roommates." She looked at me, her face softening for the first time in a while. "I don't want to hurt you. I really don't. But I don't know how to fix it. I've thought about therapy, but I'm scared of what it might bring up. What if it's something we can't come back from?" I nodded, understanding her fear because I felt the same way. "But isn't it worth trying? I'd rather know what we're dealing with than keep pretending everything's fine when it's not. I want to fight for this, for us, but I need to know that you want to fight for it too." She was quiet for a long time before finally nodding. "Okay," she whispered. "I'll try. Let's try therapy." So that's where we're at now. We've agreed to see a therapist, but I don't know what's going to happen. Part of me is hopeful, but another part of me is terrified that it's too late. I still love her, but I'm scared that love alone might not be enough to fix what's broken. I just hope we can find our way back to each other before it's too late. Update: it's getting worse. It's been several months since my last update about my marriage with Julia, and the situation has only grown more complicated and painful. I'm reaching out again to share where we're at now because I'm still trying to come to terms with everything and could use some perspective or advice. After our initial decision to try therapy, we were both hopeful. We found a couples counselor named Dr. Lewis, who seemed to understand our issues and offered some promising strategies. Our early sessions were emotional and intense. We both opened up about our feelings, fears, and the growing distance between us. Julia and I made an effort to engage in the process, and for a brief moment, I felt like we were on the path to resolving our issues. But as weeks turned into months, Julia's commitment to the therapy began to wane. She missed several sessions, citing work-related stress or last-minute emergencies. I was frustrated, but I tried to be understanding, believing her job was genuinely demanding. However, it became clear that her absences were more than just work issues. They were a reflection of her growing disengagement. One night, Julia came home late from work, her exhaustion apparent in her demeanor. We hadn't had a meaningful conversation in days, and the silence between us felt heavy. As we sat at the dinner table, I tried to break the ice. "Julia, can we talk about how things have been lately?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. She looked up from her plate, her eyes weary. "Can we not do this now? I'm really tired." "Please," I pressed gently. "I just need to understand where we're headed. We're not connecting, and it feels like we're drifting further apart." Julia sighed, setting down her fork. I don't know how to fix this. I'm overwhelmed with work and everything else. I can't keep up with the expectations. I felt a pang of frustration. It's not just about the expectations. It's about us, our relationship. We're not even talking anymore. Her eyes softened for a moment, but she quickly closed off again. I'm sorry, but I don't have the energy for this right now. As Julia's absences from therapy became more frequent, I started going alone. During one session, Dr. Lewis asked me how I felt about Julia's lack of participation. It feels like I'm carrying this burden alone, I said, my voice trembling. I'm trying to make things work, but she's not fully involved. It's like she's already checked out. Dr. Lewis nodded thoughtfully. It's important for both partners to be committed to the process for therapy to be effective. It sounds like Julia might be struggling with something deeper. Have you considered discussing these issues directly with her, beyond the therapy sessions? I nodded, even though I was already trying that. But the idea of approaching her in a different way felt like a possible solution. Things came to a head one evening when Julia came home late, looking more distressed than usual. I confronted her about her behavior and the lack of connection between us. I saw you with David the other night, I said, my voice tight. I saw the messages, and it looked like more than just friendly chatting. Julia's face paled, and she looked away. I didn't think you'd find out like this. I've been feeling so disconnected and lost. I didn't mean for it to come across like that. Her confession was like a punch to the gut. So what does this mean for us? Are you seeing someone else? Julia's eyes welled up with tears. I don't know. I was seeking comfort where I could find it. I've been so overwhelmed, and I didn't know how to handle everything. We had a heated argument that night. Julia's defensiveness and my hurt feelings created a volatile mix. She insisted she wasn't having an affair, but the emotional betrayal felt undeniable. Over the next few weeks, Julia's behavior continued to spiral. She worked longer hours, frequently citing urgent projects or unexpected demands. Her absences became more frequent, and I began to feel like an outsider in my own home. The distance between us was palpable, and every attempt I made to connect seemed to push her further away. I started to see patterns in her behavior. Julia would often come home late, and when she was home, she'd spend hours on her phone or computer, isolating herself from me. It was clear she was trying to escape from the reality of our deteriorating relationship, but it left me feeling abandoned and helpless. One night, after another quiet dinner, I decided to follow her after work. I wanted to understand what she was doing and why she was so distant. I watched as she met David at a bar, and they engaged in what seemed like intimate conversation. I felt a deep sense of betrayal and confusion. When Julia returned home that night, I was waiting for her. The confrontation that followed was emotionally charged. Julia, I saw you with David tonight, I said, struggling to keep my voice steady. It wasn't just friendly. It felt like something more. Her face flushed with a mix of guilt and frustration. I don't know what you want me to say. I've been trying to find some solace, and I didn't think it would hurt you this way. I felt a wave of sadness. It's not just about the physical aspect. It's about the fact that you're seeking comfort elsewhere while we're struggling. It feels like a betrayal. Julia's eyes filled with tears. I'm sorry. I didn't mean for any of this to happen. I've been so lost and confused. I don't know how to fix this, or even if it can be fixed. In the weeks that followed, our attempts to reconcile seemed futile. Julia's behavior remained erratic, and the emotional distance between us grew wider. The therapy sessions that once offered a glimmer of hope now felt like a distant memory. Julia's sporadic attendance and lack of engagement made it difficult to make progress, and the emotional strain was taking a toll on both of us. Julia eventually admitted that she didn't see a future for us. I'm so sorry, she said one night, her voice trembling. I didn't want to hurt you, but I can't keep pretending everything is okay. I'm not sure what I want, but I know that staying in this marriage isn't making either of us happy. Her words were a crushing blow. I felt a profound sense of loss, not just for our marriage, but for the future we had envisioned together. The connection we once shared felt irretrievably broken. We've decided to separate temporarily to give ourselves space to process everything. Julia has moved into a temporary apartment, and I'm left in the house we shared, trying to come to terms with the reality of our situation. The separation has given me some clarity, but it's also left me feeling lost and uncertain about the future. I've started individual therapy to help me navigate my emotions and gain perspective. The therapist has been helping me work through my feelings of betrayal, confusion, and sadness. I'm trying to focus on self-care and finding ways to cope with the pain. As of now, the future of our marriage remains uncertain. Julia and I are both trying to understand what went wrong and if there's any chance of repairing our relationship. The distance between us feels insurmountable, and the recent betrayal has left a deep wound. I'm still holding onto a glimmer of hope that we can find a way back to each other, but I'm also grappling with the reality that it might be too late. I'm reaching out once more for any advice or perspective from those who have been through similar situations. I'm trying to make sense of everything and find a path forward, whether it's together or apart. Any insights or experiences you can share would be greatly appreciated. Update 3, we're getting divorced. It's been a few months since my last update, and I'm writing to share the difficult news that Julia and I have decided to get a divorce. The journey to this decision has been incredibly painful and complex, and I want to provide a detailed account of what led us to this point. After our temporary separation, Julia and I attempted to address the issues in our marriage with renewed effort. We were both exhausted from the constant emotional strain, but felt a sense of responsibility to make things work for the sake of our shared history and commitment. However, our efforts to reconcile seemed to push us further apart. Our individual therapy sessions continued, with Julia attending sporadically. I remember one session where I was alone with Dr. Lewis, trying to articulate my feelings. "I feel like I'm fighting an uphill battle," I said, my voice filled with frustration. Julia isn't fully committed to the process, and it's making me feel even more isolated. I'm trying to be patient, but the lack of progress is taking a toll. Dr. Lewis nodded, offering a sympathetic smile. It's clear that both partners need to be equally invested in therapy for it to be effective. Sometimes, one person's resistance can create significant barriers. Have you considered exploring other ways to engage Julia or addressing her hesitations more directly? I took Dr. Lewis's advice to heart and tried to approach Julia with a different perspective. I decided to express my concerns more openly, hoping it might spark a change. One evening, after a particularly rough day, I decided to sit down with Julia and have an honest conversation. We were in the living room, a space that once felt warm and inviting but now seemed distant and cold. "Julia, I want to talk," I began, trying to keep my tone gentle. "I know things have been tough, but I need to understand what's going on with us. I feel like we're not even in the same room anymore." Julia looked up from her book, her expression weary. "What do you want to talk about? We've had this conversation 100 times." "I'm not asking for another argument," I said, trying to stay calm. "I just need to know if there's any hope left for us. If there isn't, maybe we need to face that reality." Julia sighed and set her book aside. "I've been feeling so lost. Work is overwhelming, and I don't know how to handle everything. I'm trying, but I feel like I'm failing both at work and in our marriage." "I understand that you're stressed," I said, reaching out to touch her hand. "But our marriage is important too. We need to find a way to reconnect, or we need to acknowledge that we're too far apart." Her eyes filled with tears. "I don't want to keep going in circles. I'm exhausted, and I don't know how to fix this." The turning point came one evening when Julia came home later than usual. She had been particularly distant, and her behavior was becoming increasingly erratic. I had a sinking feeling that something was wrong, and my concerns were confirmed when I saw her phone left unattended on the kitchen counter. I hesitated, but then decided to look through her messages. What I found were texts with a coworker named David, which were flirtatious and included plans to meet up for drinks. My heart sank as I read through the messages. The last thing I wanted was to confront Julia with this, but I knew I had to address it. When Julia came home, I tried to remain calm. "Julia, we need to talk about something I saw on your phone." Her face went pale, and she immediately looked defensive. "What did you see?" "I saw the messages between you and David," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. They didn't look like just friendly chatter. Julia's eyes filled with tears. I didn't mean for you to find out like this. I've been struggling with everything, and I was looking for some distraction. It didn't mean anything serious. I felt a surge of pain. So what does this mean for us? Is this how you're coping with our problems? By reaching out to someone else? Julia's shoulders slumped. I'm sorry. I was trying to find comfort, and I didn't realize how it would affect you. I'm so lost right now. In the weeks that followed, our attempts to reconcile became more strained. Julia's behavior remained unpredictable, and our conversations often ended in frustration. The emotional distance between us seemed insurmountable, and it became clear that our efforts were only highlighting how far apart we had grown. One night, after a particularly painful argument, Julia and I sat down to discuss our future. The conversation was charged with emotion. I don't know how much longer we can keep doing this, I said, my voice breaking. We're both so unhappy, and our attempts to fix things don't seem to be working. Maybe it's time to face the reality that we need to separate. Julia's eyes were filled with a mixture of sadness and resignation. I hate to admit it, but I think you're right. I don't want to keep dragging this out if it's only causing us more pain. We both took some time to reflect on the decision. Julia moved into a temporary apartment, and I stayed in the house we had shared. The separation allowed us both to gain perspective, but it also highlighted how deep the rift between us had become. We decided to proceed with divorce and engaged a mediator to help us navigate the process. We were determined to handle the situation amicably, acknowledging that prolonging the conflict would only cause more hurt. Julia and I had several meetings with the mediator to discuss the terms of our separation. It was a challenging process, but we tried to approach it with a sense of respect and understanding. During one of the mediation sessions, Julia looked at me with a weary expression. This feels so surreal. I can't believe we're actually doing this. I nodded, my own emotions a mix of sadness and acceptance. It's hard to accept, but I think it's for the best. We've both been through so much, and maybe this is the only way we can find peace. The finalization of our divorce was a somber moment. We signed the papers and made the necessary arrangements for dividing our assets and responsibilities. The process was emotionally draining, but we both felt a sense of relief that it was finally coming to an end. In the aftermath of the divorce, both Julia and I have been focusing on our own healing and self-discovery. Julia has been working on finding her own path, and I've been concentrating on rebuilding my life and seeking closure. I've continued with individual therapy, working through the emotional fallout of the divorce. My therapist has been helping me navigate my feelings of loss, confusion, and acceptance. I'm trying to focus on self-care and find new ways to move forward. Julia and I have remained in occasional contact to ensure that we can both move on with a sense of closure. Our interactions are marked by mutual respect, and we've both acknowledged the importance of moving forward separately. The end of our marriage has been a challenging and emotional journey. While the process was painful, I believe that separating was the right decision for both of us. I'm grateful for the support I've received from friends, family, and the therapy community. As I continue to heal and navigate this new chapter of my life, I'm hopeful that both Julia and I will find the peace and fulfillment we're searching for. Thank you to everyone who has offered advice, support, and encouragement throughout this journey. Your insights have been invaluable, and I appreciate the community for being a source of comfort during this difficult time.